The health of Iran's new supreme leader collapses just when the regime most needed to show strength, order, and command. On this Monday, April 27, 2026, Iranians are grappling with a cruel question. Is Mojtaba Khamenei really ruling? Or is the Islamic Republic trying to hide from the world that it has lost control at the very top? This question exploded after Mojtaba Khamenei's face was displayed on a mural dedicated to deceased figures of the Islamic Republic. I'll tell you all about this in a moment, but right now you'll want to subscribe to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the best journalistic quality you've ever seen. Milson Alves, the standard of credibility. The suspicion exploded after supporters of the regime displayed Mojtaba Khamenei's face on a mural dedicated to deceased figures of the Islamic Republic. The event happened in Mashhad, a city connected to the history of the Khamenei family and to the symbolic heart of Iranian religious power. The problem is simple and serious. Tehran had been saying for weeks that Mojtaba was alive, injured, but conscious and making decisions. But by placing his face next to leaders and commanders treated as martyrs, the very environment of the regime created room for doubt that the government was trying to suppress. There is no official confirmation of death, but there is also no public appearance, no video speech, no clear audio for the Iranian people, and no strong proof that the new supreme leader is really in command. And when a closed regime, which survives by controlling its image, lets a doubt of this size grow, it's a serious sign. Mojtaba Khamenei took over the position after the death of Ali Khamenei, who was struck during the offensive that shook the entire Iranian leadership. Since then, the information circulating suggests that Mojtaba was seriously injured. His face and lips are said to have suffered burns. One of his legs reportedly underwent 3 surgeries. There might even be a need for plastic surgery before any attempt at a public reappearance. Even so, sources close to the regime insisted that he was mentally well and involved in behind-the-scenes decisions. The issue is that no one saw this. And in wartime politics, absence communicates. A supreme leader who doesn't show up, doesn't speak, and doesn't demonstrate command leaves room for generals, factions, and heads of the Revolutionary Guard to fill the void. That's when a health crisis turns into a power crisis. Donald Trump realized this and toughened his stance. The President of the United States canceled the trip of his envoys for talks in Pakistan, and he made it clear that Washington will not act as if it depends on Tehran. That statement hit right at the heart of the problem. Trump didn't just talk about distance, agenda, or protocol. He publicly raised a doubt that was already circulating behind the scenes. Iran is divided. There is an internal dispute. There are doubts about who is in charge. And maybe there are groups within the regime itself trying to avoid leadership, because the cost of governing at this moment has become too high. Iran tried to respond with diplomacy. The Iranian foreign minister went to Pakistan. He talked with mediators. He passed through Oman. And then he returned to the diplomatic circuit to try to keep the negotiations alive. But the move did not seem like a sign of strength. On the contrary. Soon after the cancellation announced by Trump, a new Iranian proposal emerged, which was considered better by the Americans, and that detail matters. If just a few minutes after American pressure, Iran improves the document delivered to the mediators, then it's clear that the White House hit where it hurt. The regime felt the political blow and tried to reduce the damage. The main point of the negotiation continues to be the nuclear program. Trump left a simple message. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. For Washington, there is no real agreement if Tehran tries to put this issue off until later. The Iranian regime wants to get relief from the blockade and get some economic breathing room. The United States wants to extract a central concession before easing the pressure. And in this tug of war, the uncertain health of Mojtaba Khamenei further weakens the Iranian position. The Revolutionary Guard appears as a decisive player in this crisis. Mojtaba has always been seen as someone close to the regime's toughest commanders. His selection to succeed Ali Khamenei would have been pushed by this military faction. This military faction gained more influence after the attacks against the Iranian leadership. With the supreme leader injured or absent, the Revolutionary Guard gains even more influence over the armed forces, the civilian government, and even the negotiation team. That helps explain why Trump said he will deal with whoever is in charge, but in no hurry and unwilling to tolerate theatrics. For the United States, the question is practical. Does an Iranian negotiator have the power to close a deal, or are they just delivering messages from a faction that could be overruled by another? While Iran's domestic politics seems stuck, American economic pressure is advancing. The so-called Operation Economic Fury continues even with the pause in direct military attacks. The goal is to suffocate the regime's revenue, especially from oil, which supports much of the power machine in Tehran. In recent days, the United States Treasury has targeted a Chinese refinery linked to the purchase of Iranian oil. And it also targeted companies, ships, and networks that help the regime sell oil despite the sanctions. These small refineries, known for operating with oil from sanctioned nations, were created precisely to handle deals that large companies avoid. They buy from Iran, Russia, and other governments under pressure, trying to bypass the Western financial system. But Washington doesn't need to shut down a refinery to cause damage. It's enough to make the business more expensive, slower, and riskier. When the United States sanctions shipping companies, insurers, banks, and intermediaries, Iranian oil doesn't disappear, but it becomes harder to move. The buyer asks for a discount. Insurance costs go up. The ship faces more risk. The bank fears punishment. And in the end, Tehran receives less money. That's the part the regime can't hide. Even if it can still sell oil through alternative routes, the margin decreases, the money arrives late, partners become more cautious, and the pressure on the domestic economy grows. For a government already facing war, economic pressure, suspicion of a power vacuum, and a weary population, every cut in revenue becomes another crack. In addition to oil, the United States is also targeting digital assets linked to the regime. The idea is simple. If Iranian authorities try to store resources in cryptocurrencies or in companies outside the traditional banking system, Washington pressures the platforms, freezes accounts, and blocks transactions. The technology may seem beyond state control, but the companies operating these accounts can still be hit by sanctions. According to reports, Iran even used retired ships as floating storage units. It's a temporary solution, not a strategic way out. Even by using idle supertankers in the Persian Gulf, the benefit would be limited. The regime could only gain a few more days of relief before facing the same problem again. Lack of space to store the output. Trump took advantage of this point by saying that Iran was close to a dangerous limit. The logic is that when there's nowhere to store the oil, production needs to be reduced. And reducing production isn't just a matter of pressing a button. In many cases, shutting down wells can damage the structure and make restarting difficult, expensive, or incomplete. From the American perspective, this risk increases Tehran's urgency for a deal. The regime still tries to maintain the narrative that there is control, recovery, and negotiation. But the visible reality is different. The leader does not appear. The economy suffers, the blockade adds pressure, the Revolutionary Guard advances. And Trump acts as if he believes he doesn't need to offer relief before receiving tough concessions. In the end, Mojtaba Khamenei's health collapsed as a public issue at the worst possible moment for Tehran. Iran needs clear leadership, money, and a diplomatic way out, but it faces blockade, sanctions, American pressure, and an invisible leader. And while the regime tries to explain the unexplainable, Trump keeps up the pressure and repeats the same message in different words. The United States is not going to chase after a government that can't even prove who's in charge. Like this video, subscribe, and check the comments at the end to engage more with the Mills and Alves community.